This is episode 1 of the Energy Insights podcast, which we're doing at PowerHub Solutions. I'm James Bett, the Managing Director at PowerHub. So the podcast today is going to be about what problems are hospitality and leisure businesses facing. Is it cost, carbon, or continuity? We're very, very lucky to have James Taylor, our first guest for the Energy Insights podcast, with us today. James is a cost and carbon consultant. He has worked in industry for over 20 years, and there's not much he has not seen, done, failed, or won. James, so nice to have you here today. How are you?
Excellent, thanks for having me.
Good. Since the last energy price spike, what actually changed for operators and what did not?
It's a good question. I mean, obviously, we both know energy quite well, and that's kind of what we live and breathe and think about each day. You've got to remember that hospitality operators are spinning the energy plate at the same time as spinning lots of other plates as well. So, you know, they will constantly be thinking about sales, cost of goods and labour.
Yeah.
Each, you know, extremely important to making sure that sales convert into profit and energy can get left behind. To put into context, a stable energy market may mean that kind of energy is about 3% of turnover for a hospitality business. When the market's at its highest, it might go to 12% or more. So when it's up at double digits, it's really impacting the P&L. And the last energy price spike got it to that point where, and you know, operators were really kind of focusing on it and needing to take action. But you've got to remember that they're also taking action on national living wage and national insurance increases and footfall decreases, and how do they optimize the spend per cover once somebody has come through the door. So it's changed things from a point of view of they probably need to take some action, but you've got to remember that they're doing so many other things at the same time as well.
Yeah, and it's almost, you could see it as protecting from that potential volatility later down the line, which we can explore a little bit in more detail. But I think what I've got from that is they're spinning so many plates, and that volatility of energy by really can really impact, like you said, from, I think it was 3%, was it? Yeah, from 3% of cost up to 12% with the last spike. Having that protection there and having those systems to implement and reduce could potentially help a hospitality operator. Where should energy sit in the weekly trading conversation in a way that it does not slip them by that kind of Friday period? So how would you want an operator to, let's say, scope energy in that kind of weekly meeting?
Yeah, so most operators are going to meet on a Monday to discuss the previous week's performance and what they need to do this week. Clearly, throughout the week, weekends are an important time, so Monday's always a good time to do that as well. Energy is the third highest cost after cost of food and goods and after labour, so it should be on that conversation. Quite often it isn't.
Yeah.
And that's because they're scared of it, I think. They don't understand it. They haven't got a left or a right hand arm that knows exactly what to do to impact it. And also, you know, the data's not necessarily there consistent and accurately enough in a timely manner. You know, sales data from your POS systems, stock data from your stock and order systems, all of that for most operators is literally like that now. So we've got to get energy to the point of view where operators are confident in the data that they're seeing and therefore confident in talking about the topic and being able to influence it.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I really get what you're saying there. Is there a way, do you think, of the role of the energy manager being brought into those conversations more often? Because like what you've identified there, from what I understood, is supply and goods and labour. They've got those levers there to pull at any time to kind of sort out the issue in that kind of area. The energy manager could be a real kind of position in that business to have that lever there to implement something to obviously make it less risky around that kind of energy topic within an operator. Would you kind of agree down that road?
Yeah, I mean, at first I thought you were making an assumption that all operators have got energy managers. Of course they've not. But they do have that right-hand man, that left-hand woman
Yeah.
that knows what lever to pull from their toolkits in order to influence sales, get more footfall through, convert those sales by controlling the cost of goods and the labor, and they don't necessarily have that person in place to know what to do to impact energy really quickly.
Yeah.
So that role would definitely be very useful.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be necessarily a full-time role.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a full-time equivalent employee. You
Yeah.
know, it could be
A champion in a current role or existing role,
exactly
turning
that.
them into
Which is quite often
Yeah.
how the full-time role normally starts within an
Yeah.
operator. It's normally a very well-performing
Yeah.
general manager or area manager who
Yeah.
has an interest and a passion in that area and then tends to kind of naturally fall into that.
How much more can real-time data turn the dial than kind of using a typical smart meter?
Good question. I think it depends where the operator is already at on their journey. So if we assume that they haven't started at all, then the natural starting point is your smart meter data, because typically now 99 out of 100 businesses, restaurants, hotels, pubs, etc. should have that in place. The industry is mandating that data is available. So it's a good place to start, good place to get your quick wins in place, good place to start to understand where your hotspots are and where the opportunities are. For a company that has already been doing that for a while and has optimized everything in that area, it can turn the dial another good few percentage points.
Yeah.
Likewise, if they've not started the journey and they don't got the time, the resource, inclination to start with the half-hourly data, but perhaps have a CapEx budget to kind of throw at energy and almost kind of like fix it because it needs fixing, then, you know, you're starting from a high base where that real-time controls and monitoring will make a real difference.
Yeah.
Question you've got to ask yourself is, would you rather put that money somewhere else? Because a lot of operators would say, hey, can't we just do that through behavioural change?
Yes. Yeah. No, I totally hear what you're saying there. I think what I've taken from that really importantly is, if AMR meters and smart meters is what you've got, master that first, master that art of making it work. And once it is mastered, consider the option of looking down the real-time route, real-time monitoring, and potentially some controls attached to that. But yeah, you can do a lot, as we know, as you know, with just the kind of raw metered data.
Yeah, real-time monitoring, asset level monitoring, controls, they're not like a drop a cap over it type of solution. I would suggest you do it in some test bed size, an old one, a new one, a high user, a low user, a high sales, a lower sales, and just start to use it as a test bed really to then kind of swap out bits of kit and see what the difference is and inform decisions on further future rollout.
Yeah, it's something I find myself talking to a lot of property managers I've spoken to and had the pleasure of speaking with, is the good, the bad and the ugly in terms of the estate. And that's always the best kind of test bed for any sort of pilot or any sort of innovation in that kind of operator. That's what I find anyway. This is an interesting one, as it's kind of, the action has been done, the objective's been set, and a project has gone over the line. So when an operator has set a budget for a project, how do they make sure that they actually are backing the right horse? How do they make sure that the evidence is there?
Yeah, so we guess it's almost as if you planned that, James. We've sort of, you know, started to touch on that already, I think. You're talking about validating savings, and I like the way you say when they set a budget, because they should be setting a budget really to address this sort of thing. I think people want proof, and it's hard to prove the impact of a marketing campaign, let's say, for example, but it's widely accepted that you do marketing campaigns anyway. With energy reductions, like, you're forced to prove the savings and then not necessarily know what you're going to do once you've proven them. This sector tends to work on like for likes versus last year versus budget, etc. So they're all natural things to do. It's very seasonal. So it has to be like, you know, remove as many variables as possible to make sure that it's as like for like as possible. And then normally kind of validate versus a control set as well. So again, removing the variables, assuming that the variables are the same across the estate. So you're literally going to be looking before and after.
Yeah.
versus last year and versus a control. Those three metrics, I would say.
So I think really there is that once a budget for a project is live and that project's moving ahead, it's all about setting up the project for success, giving it the opportunity to show what it can deliver with those controls, with that test bed, with the different types of sites being brought into that kind of project. That's really, really interesting.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, like, the operator shouldn't mess suppliers about. There's a lot of that in terms of like wanting a free trial here or a free trial there. It's like, what are you going to do after that free trial has taken place? So
Yeah.
there's almost an onus on the relationship between the solution provider and the operator really does to kind of say, if you then I. So if the solution provider can prove that a solution works, then the operator should commit to spending the budget that they have set aside for this.
Yeah, that'd be a dream. I like that. So the next topic's a little bit about behavior before kit, as I think I'm a big believer that behavior has got to work in parallel with kit. I wouldn't say always do it first. I'd say maybe do it alongside. But I think a lot of operators, they've got an easy win there, a quick win, low-hanging fruit in terms of empowering the operators on a site-by-site level and encouraging behavioural change, whether that be stick, carrot, whatever it may be, which method they choose. But which default behaviours drive the most waste in restaurants, pubs, hotels, and how do we flip them?
Yeah, I mean, it's close down and start up are the two areas you should always start to concentrate on. That's where most of the wastage happens. I think if we get too psychologically into it, we'd realize that they've had a really hard shift that day. You know, these people work long, hard hours and perhaps, you know, forget to do things that need doing after trade is finished and after the legal compliance stuff is finished, like taking fridge temperatures and doing your health and safety stuff and what have you. And in the morning, you know, they're focused on the prep and what have you, and therefore what is the easiest thing for them to do. So behavioural wise, the starting point is always overnight close downs and fire ups in the morning.
So that build up to out of hours and then throughout the out of hours period. Now that's really interesting. A little side one here is we've been working a lot recently exploring the opportunity for virtual kill switches, controls, not costly controls, cost effective controls, which can go into a site and give that virtual kill switch. And what's your opinion on that kind of protocol? Putting it in control out of the site's hands and putting it maybe upstream in that organization.
That absolutely has to be done in tandem with behavioural change, because if the team on site hasn't understood why you're doing that, what impact it has and how it benefits them, they will find some way to break it. They will. I've seen it done so many times, not necessarily with that solution, that technology, but with many other things. So it has to be done in time with behaviour. And yeah, it should work. An operator will challenge whether they need it, because actually we can build it into our standard operating procedure. But we know that staff turnover is high, KMs leave quite regularly, GMs virtually as much. And therefore, like, embedding that consistently is difficult. So actually taking it out of their hand makes their job easier, as long as they understand why.
No, I get that.
And they do have to have some sort of override, because things happen in restaurants and pubs a lot. Friday, Saturday night, a late table coming in, whatever. Maybe you've got a deep clean and that sort of thing. So they need some autonomy, because it is their business after all.
So it's empowering that movement of behaviour and tech to complement the behaviour change, not to rule it out and not to replace it. Yeah. So on the flip side of this, give a single kind of one-line policy or routine change that delivered more kilowatt hour reductions than a CapEx project. What do you think the big behavioural changes that can really have a lot of bang for their buck in terms of really easy to implement, which can really give the kind of CapEx projects a run for their money as such in terms of ROI? And
yeah, I mean, I'll not labour the point. I think we've touched on it. Is close down procedures and overnight stuff. That's where, like, 80% of the 80-20 rule, that's where the opportunity is. the challenge is making sure that it sticks and it's embedded.
What's really interesting is bringing monitoring and behavioral change together as actually the validation of having the kilowatt hour consumption there, whilst instrumenting the behavioral change to validate it, as obviously that would be seen as a really low cost way of reducing your energy and making sure that you're trimming the waste before you even look into efficiency and things like that.
Yeah, I think what you find is that restaurants, pubs, etc., they've not got predictable loads. Weather can be massively impact them because it impacts sales and impacts the building. Capital investment projects tend to work better, more consistently on predictable loads. So if you can do what you can to optimize it and kind of flatten the top hat profile, if you like,
I love it,
without getting too technical, then the capital projects have got you get a more realistic view of what they're going to deliver, layered upon quick wins, rather than kind of taking the quick wins as their own.
So I think throughout this kind of topic, we've seen that behavior change is really, really important. Not setting anyone up for failure, and I don't mean to I don't want to come across like that in any way, but when inevitably behavior change does fail, what is usually missing, in your opinion? The nudge, the feedback loop, or the incentive in the first place?
I think probably if I had to name one of those, it'd be the incentive. You've got to assume that kind of the nudge and the feedback loop is there. Otherwise, it's not going to have succeeded before it fails. And that's what you're kind of assuming happens there. You know, whether it's a carrot business or a stick business, most hospitality operators are carrot businesses. They're used to using incentives for sales, for second serve, for bolt-on orders and upselling on side orders and things like that. So, you know, why shouldn't energy or any other kind of efficiency drive be different? I think the incentive needs to be there. It needs to be consistent. And kind of, you know, I've seen operators put an incentive in year one and then expect them to double down in year two with no incentive. Well, you know, it's quite not going to happen, I don't think.
And I think bringing it from a competitive kind of edge is having those sites almost competing with each other. I think it's a really nice, friendly, behavioral, it's almost further behavioral change. It's behavioral incentives, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's not new. You know, big hospitality operators are naturally really competitive, but against each other, brand versus brand, but against region within the same brands as well. Like, you know, they want to be top of the table for health and safety scores, food hygiene scores, sales, you know, all of that kind of stuff. So
bring it in there.
Realistically, it needs to become naturally part of that drumbeat of the business.
I wonder, this is just a crazy thought that's popped into my mind, but like a national leaderboard where you could get multiple brands competing between different brands, intrinsic competition. I think that would be something I would like to see.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they do that already with sales on the Peach Tracker. So again, there's a precedent for it, but you know, I think I'd like to see people just taking action in their own right first. I don't know what that'd look like.
If you had one day on site, where would you look first and why?
I mean, it's HVAC all the time. It's the biggest. Heating, air conditioning, and ultimately not just ventilation, but extraction as well. And not just the movement of air, that you know, that's the biggest load on any site. It's going to top trump the entire load of all the assets on your cook line. So it's always where the make or break is.
Yeah. And what out of hours checks can save real money by next week? So what real quick things can be implemented as a quick time saver? Yeah. What out of hours checks, again, would it be HVAC?
Yeah, it is, and I'm taking like an estate view here. So you're going to have some restaurants who are optimized and are good as well, and they're probably the same restaurants that are really good on sales and really good on cost of goods and really good on labor, and it's because they've got a stable GM and KM in place. So we take a holistic view across the estate, use kind of upper quartile to median, and management, you know, managing the exceptions point of view. this sentence is way too long because it's essentially your timers and your shutdown on your HVAC. Do not leave the building with the extraction still running, because it's going to cost you like 5 figures a year in some cases.
Understood. And I think this one's, it may be, again, a very similar answer around that HVAC topic, but one operational change that reliably sticks without any new kit.
Don't want to labour the point again. It's close down and fire up, and the two often come hand in hand. We see that if someone's sorted the close down, it gets people thinking, well, hey, what else could we do? And naturally, they're done like almost like a phased close down, and there's certain assets that they can get rid of at the end of trade, and then some that have to wait until you leave the building. So naturally, in the morning, you might see that phased fire up come into play as well. Like it.
So you're learning from implementing one thing to directly benefiting another part of the operations.
And I think that's behavioural change in its purest form. There's the question of what's next.
And then just on kind of alongside that piece, in terms of a company wanting to adopt that real strong behavioural change, do you think that will then actually help them identify other areas of savings once they've got to that kind of, let's say, base camp in terms of behavioural change is nailed, and you're looking at, you've cut out the waste? Do you think that then it's almost like a springboard into other efficiency measures, other forms of optimization, and bringing that energy reduction piece even stronger and really building that in then? Do you think that's a natural springboard, or do you think it still needs that encouragement?
It's not a natural one. Well, it is to a certain extent, in that, the guys on site really care about this sort of thing. And we know from research that people will leave jobs or choose another brand over yours because of the environmental impact. So naturally, these people kind of do understand it from home and things that are in the news and come up with their own ideas. But leveling that up further, I don't think people realize that you can do things on energy, and then you can almost take that approach, data-driven approach, and apply it to waste and apply it to water. They're the obvious ones.
Yeah.
But also consumables and other overhead lines on the P&L that, there will be an upper quartile to median opportunity to save, I've seen it 74% in 3 sites on consumable spend, just by using the data, working out why they're using so much, and then addressing that.
Yeah, and water, one thing which I've picked up there, I think water is going to become ever more important in the kind of sustainability piece. What are your views on that?
I mean, water use on site is one thing. Water kind of in the broader supply and value chain is another. Water scarcity in certain areas and things like that. In terms of like the 3 utilities of power, gas and water, it's always the forgotten one.
Yeah.
For a number of reasons. It's by far the smallest spend.
Yeah.
Normally. But as people are degasifying now and moving to electric, then I guess those 2 spends could be closer together than they were. Of course, we had massive water rate rises in April 2025, so that pumps the spend up quite a bit. But the thing with data is, yes, there is AMR available, but it's not always been as reliable as electricity, and the ROI with it can be a lot longer payback because naturally it's a lower spend in the first place. Otherwise, the thing with water is it's very tangible. You turn a tap on and it's there in front of you pouring out. If there's a leaky toilet valve or whatever, you can normally see it or hear it. So I think the thing with water is it's quite tangible and should be a natural kind of behavioural change thing. Why would you just drive energy when actually you can incorporate gas, water, waste
into an overall strategy? Understood. So the next topic, from ideas, so that original spark, that idea, to then turning it into a credible plan. So for boards and finance, what turns a list of ideas into a credible transition plan? That'd be really, really kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think data, really, and an appetite, certainly. An appetite to do something, or certainly understand what the art of the possible might be. But you can't really do any of this. Hospitality operators talk a lot about you can't manage what you're not measuring. And that's actually one of the biggest pushbacks on energy savings quite often is like, look, we can manage our we can measure our sales, we can measure our labor, we can measure our cost of goods and wastage from that, etc. But we can't measure our energy yet. Should be able to with your AMRs and half hourly data and that kind of thing. But ultimately it's data and understanding where you're starting from.
So every plan, every idea has to have a measurable KPI to support it. Is what you're getting at, is it's got to be measured, verified, validated. And until then, it's just an idea.
Yeah, and even before that, you're talking about where are your hotspots, what's your addressable, let's call it addressable spend. There might be kind of sacred holy cows in there that you can't touch because it's going to impact guest journey or whatever.
Brand related.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So data and then hotspots, addressable spend, starting to move towards a plan.
Yeah.
Prioritizing things.
So that transition plan's there. How do you link targets to the P&L so they can stick and they can survive the next budget round and keep tracking with similar projects? A lot of what I've learned is, like you mentioned, a project that's measured and verified and validated has got a much higher success rate than a project which is kind of off the whim, done as a bit of a side quest. No real kind of asset internally has been thrown at that. So how do you link those targets to the P&L so they do have that kind of longevity and that survival for the next budget round so they can keep on with it?
I think, first of all, you've got to fold it into your overall strategy. There's no point having like a strategy for your brand or your business here and then having an ESG strategy or an environmental one or an energy one sit alongside it. It's got to be folded in so the two work in tandem to achieve the overall goal of the business. But I think you would say that about any strategy or policy within a business. It's important to bake at least some of it, if not all of it, into the budget as well. So the way that businesses tend to work is, they've got a sales budget and a profit expectation, an EBITDA forecast, and certain things have to happen in order for that to deliver.
Yeah.
So if you're expecting energy savings to be a bonus on top of that, then that's great, but it can then fall away to the wayside. But I think if it's actually baked in, that's where I've seen it work best.
So bake it into the overall business forecast, extrapolate those savings which you've seen on a pilot site and include it across the estate and look at how that can actually change the P&L. Yeah,
because then if it doesn't happen, this number over here is not happening. And that's a major problem for people.
Yeah, no, that's a really, really insightful way of looking at it. Actually.
Scary, because people aren't going to, again, they don't understand it. It's a new thing. There's no precedent for it. So number one thing that a CEO, CFO will never do is set a target without knowing how they're going to achieve it. Sometimes in the more holistic view of ESG and sustainability, that's what we're asking people to do, but almost go out on a whim. Think beyond 12 months, think beyond 3 years and 5 years, which is what most people tend to do, and look a bit further out.
Yeah.
If some of that at least isn't baked in, then, it's the first thing to go.
Yeah, I really like that. I really like that. So talking a little bit more about the plan then, these plans that you've obviously seen day in, day out, name one metric you would want in every hospitality plan this year.
Kind of just be as simple as saying,
simple as you like.
Have some reduction in there.
Love it.
If you're starting from
do
scratch,
something, that's the call to action. It
might even be arbitrary, and you might make some kind of contingency for it within the overall plan, but have something in there, whether it's 5%, 10%, 15% overall. Hopefully you have some data to show what is applicable. When you're further on down your journey, you can't naturally expect everybody to continually deliver reductions. So you might have a cohort of sites that just have to maintain their usage because they've already got 3 or 5 years like-for-like reduction. There might be a cohort of sites that have massively increased their usage for the right reasons, like they've had new kit installed and because the heating was broken, etc., or for the wrong reasons because the KM left and they messed up in the nicest sense. So, you might have a cohort that reduces, a cohort that maintains, and a cohort that just like is almost like an emergency room kind of ICU cohort that really needs an arm around them.
Relating back to the ugly sites, potentially those kind of sites, the problem child sites, ones which have got people scratching their heads about why is that there. And that's a lot what we see on kind of our side of the energy space and being an energy reduction business. We seem to get a lot of input around this is our problem site, and we'll just get thrown a problem site to look at, analyze, monitor, verify, validate, reduce, whatever it may be. Whereas I think it's so important, just relating back to something we said earlier, is looking at the impact it could have in a good site. Because if you can reduce consumption in a good site as well as a problem site, you've got a solution there which can be extrapolated across a lot of sites. So yeah, I think identifying the problem site is really, really important, but also not forgetting about the others, 100%. And I like how you've put that into the different cohorts. That can almost stagger an estate based on the performance, energy consumption, and look at how they can do different things, but all be doing something. And again, it relates back to your true initial point is do something, which I really, really like. I think everyone can use a bit of that, to be honest. So the next topic, supply chain and scope 3 without panic, right up your street. And I think the best way to kick this one off would be to ask you a very direct question, and good luck to this answer. Scope 1 versus scope 2 versus scope 3 in 30 seconds.
Okay, yeah, no, without panic as well, you mentioned. Yeah, I mean, people still don't understand this. And to be fair, a lot of the sector now understands this. And if you'd asked me 3 years ago, definitely 5. If people knew what scope 3 was, no. Are they measuring it? No. A lot of people are now. But does my 30 seconds start now?
It starts now.
So this is not the greenhouse gas protocol. It is not a dictionary definition. This is a layperson's definition. Scope 1 is gas, plus if you own any vehicles. Scope 2 is the electricity you buy and use on your sites. And scope 3 is a right old mess, basically. It is upstream emissions in your value chain and downstream emissions in your value chain.
Yeah.
So the things you buy and sell and what happens to them afterwards. So you might buy in some chicken that has a carbon impact related to it. Somebody will cook it and eat it on site. There might be a little bit left over that goes away in a doggy bag or into a bin, and that's your downstream emissions.
Perfect. I think that was great. I mean,
if we did this again,
yeah,
I'd have a different answer for you.
I think one thing I want to pull in there is, as a business reducing solely scope 2, sometimes I feel like we've not pulled the short straw, but we're only a bit player in such a wider problem. And I think that's really, really important, is when we're speaking to the brands we work with, when we're speaking to our current clients, is making them aware of the other things they can be doing and pointing them in the right direction from peers, other businesses geared up to help in that space and that area, that scope is the word I was looking for. Coming on to that, what I really like the idea of is, for example, we're working with X hospitality and leisure business. Their suppliers are X or Y manufacturer. Not only trying to reduce the scope 2 emissions of the end user, the operator, the hospitality and leisure brand, but also going up chain to the manufacturer and reducing scope 2 emissions for them as well by reducing their electricity. I think if we can, as a business, this is something for me and the team upstairs to get our heads around, but I think if we can nail that could be a really exciting kind of conversation starter, could be a real interesting kind of let's say introductory piece of when we're working with a manufacturer. If you put us onto your supply chain downstream, we may be able to do something with them, which is directly replicals, like different technology, or if it's geared up differently, who knows? But I really like the idea of kind of us as a business being able to help both sides of the supply and obviously the end user as well. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that worked really well. Like, I don't know whether you or the audience have realised it's obvious to me at least that you're helping the operator reduce their costs and consumption.
Yeah.
And if you help their supply chain, that's helping them reduce their scope 3.
Correct.
Yeah. Plus reducing the cost base of the supplier, which should roll through as a cost reduction in their cost of goods as well. So
yeah, you put it much better than I did.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
Yeah.
I don't see it always coming off, and I don't really know why.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I mean, we've worked with food manufacturers, we've worked with packaging manufacturers. So maybe getting some of those case studies in front of the others, and maybe using some of the end users that we've worked with to kind of persuade the manufacturer to hear us out potentially. That's my marketing brain going anyway. But no, really, really exciting stuff. With most emissions in purchased goods and services, that's huge, right? That's a huge part of it. What is kind of practical to do now in relation to that?
I don't want to be hypocritical, so I've said that the industry has come a long way and has started to measure and stuff, but let's assume for simplicity that they haven't done anything yet. So again, it comes back to data. You know, there's a decision tree in the calculation process that says if your data is here, we will apply an arbitrary average conversion factor to work out and calculate your carbon impact. If your data is better, and you know where that product came from, how it was transported, how it was manufactured or reared or grown, and how much it weighs, which most people should do, then that improves the accuracy.
Yeah.
That's what they need to do first. After that, there's a whole load of toolkit of levers that, you know, they might need to start pulling.
No, really interesting. So once an operator has understood the data, and that's been underpinning this entire conversation, and I think it really is great that it has, because it's maybe putting a suggestion out there is measure, monitor. So once an operator has got there, they've understood that data. Elaborate on a kind of next step example which comes to mind for you.
Yeah, well, what people start to do really is they've got to engage with the supply chain, and they've got to be able to like map where their suppliers are at. And quite often they'll be doing this already, whether they've rated them gold, silver, bronze, or platinum, or category partner versus category contingency and things like that. But they'll know roughly where their suppliers are. You've just got to throw another layer and lens over that in terms of carbon. So how aligned is that supplier with where they want to get to? How important is that supplier? And you come up with an age-old 4-box matrix. You know, these guys are really important to us, but there's a risk there, or these guys aren't that important to us, but there's no risk, etc.
Yeah.
And typically within those 4 boxes, you start to get a lever or 3 to pull in each area.
Yeah.
Sometimes you might have to exit a supplier.
Yeah.
But within that comes an opportunity, because if that's a contingency supplier and you can start to give those products to another existing supplier who then become more important, they're more likely to work with you on something.
Yeah.
Good buyers will have understood the cost base already. Where there's cost, there's carbon. So, you know, we've already identified if you help a supplier reduce their energy, that reduces the cost. It also reduces the scope 3 emissions. There'll be suppliers who are just like way behind, but they're so important to you, you can't move away from them. So perhaps using some of the examples of where other suppliers are doing well, you can kind of step and repeat that with that supplier and support them along the journey.
Bring it to them, make the request, make that claim that supplier must do something, or the business may go elsewhere. But there's no bigger persuader than that. It's very stick. There's not much carrot in it, but I think it would work.
Yeah, but the thing is, you can't use your sticks too early. You can't start asking people to contract things or put like penalties into contracts too early before they've really understood it, what they've got to do, and they don't really stand a chance. I don't think that's fair. And the whole thing with Scope 3 is it's almost about like, it is shifting the blame up and down a little bit and putting the onus on certain people, but you'll not be achieved without collaboration and without partnership.
Yeah, and then hoping it kind of fits into that equilibrium where everyone's kind of playing their role, playing their part, doing what they can.
Yeah.
At that given point, and that's only then going to develop once you're at that kind of base camp. You can only improve from there, can't you?
Yeah, what you tend to have is like, I'm going to say 3 types of suppliers. There's new kids on the block, kind of like your academy squad type supplier who often startups, they've got really innovative solution that's naturally less carbon intensive, but they haven't got the scale. So their pricing is too high and then they can't penetrate the market. So almost you need some collaboration across the sector to put some forward purchasing volumes in place, which allows that supplier to invest. You've then got kind of the middle cohort on the Venn diagram that'll kind of, you know, be run of the mill. They've been riding the coattails of hospitality for a while now, what have you. They are on the bus.
Yeah.
They've got their own targets in place, and that's great because there's often a double-digit carbon Scope 3 saving from just holding these suppliers to account.
Yeah.
So if they're going to, they've said they're going to reduce by X% by 2030, hold them to that and help them achieve it.
Yeah.
And the reductions will naturally flow through.
Yeah.
And then there will be some people who will exit the market because they've just not kind of got on the bandwagon. You know, you look at your Woolworths, your MFIs, your HMVs, it wasn't carbon related, but it's because they've not kind of managed their risk properly.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. And it would be great to see carbon in the near future becoming more of one of those things that defines a good and bad supplier. I think that's super important to a business wanting to achieve those objective and pretty confident net zero targets that you see out there. Is that's going to be a really fundamental part of it.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, naturally a buyer concentrates on price, availability and provenance.
Yeah.
When provenance, you can probably include, like, you know, quality and safety and all that kind of thing in there as well. But the hospitality leaders are doing this already. The leadership group, they might be the kind of, you know, the not even the upper quartile, the upper 8th or the upper 20th even, but they are doing it and starting to build these even as unscored matrix in joint business plans and things like that.
Those conversations are happening.
Yeah.
Those engagement, that engagement's there.
Yeah.
That's really good to hear. One supplier ask you would make this quarter, and on the other side of that, so that's the ask. What's one common green claim that you would challenge?
Okay, so there's definitely two questions there, isn't there? I mean, first of all, and we touched on it a little bit, like, hold them to account. Like it's the same in the other kind of KPIs that buyers will be looking at. Like, you hold the price, make sure the availability is there, and make sure that the provenance and the safety is there. It's the same with anything else. Like, do what you say you're going to do. That's all people want from a supplier, really.
It's that accountability.
Yeah. And then in terms of, like, claims, obviously you've got the green claims code, and that's quite rigid, and people are being called out and prosecuted more for, like, greenwashing and what have you. But I'm a firm believer in, like, 7 out of 10 is okay, as long as you document the doubt, as long as you kind of admit that it's not perfect, and you know that you need to go again. So it's just like about being honest, as I say, being transparent, documenting the doubt, and not letting the risk of greenwashing stop you from taking any action in the first place.
That's super important.
Like, action anxiety is a massive thing for me. Like, people are scared of being called out because they've seen it happen. And I've got a soapbox moment on that, which I won't go into today. For a beer, maybe.
But I mean, that's I completely agree. Is the threat of not doing it right and the worry and anxiety, like you said, of not doing it right, never mind in everyday life, but for these businesses wanting to do something about it, that being a barrier is a really annoying one. And I think it does need removing. And like you said, nothing has to be perfect. No one's expecting perfection. I mean, I would struggle to think of people who have got it perfect. That there's got to be huge amounts of change, and projects differ and change and elaborate and improve, and there's so many different metrics to it. So I think that's a really important thing you've said there as part of this conversation.
Contradict what I said earlier a little bit with regards to data. You've got to get the data in some sort of shape, but people, like, you know, absolutely obsess over it to the point where they want it all to add up. And, you know, carbon accounting is a little bit of a dark art. I heard a guy from Unilever once say, you'll never measure Scope 3, you'll only ever model it. So you just got to get it to a point where people understand it and, you know, are comfortable with the level that it's at. Because if you obsess over the data too much, you're going to be in iteration 15 of your footprint without having taken any action at all.
Yeah.
So get it to a point where you're comfortable with it, and then, you know, start taking the action alongside.
Yeah. And it's almost putting my initial question to absolute bed is, shut up, James, about the green claims. It's encouraging people to do something, which I love. I love about that answer. If an operator wants kind of a measurable Scope 2 reduction in the shortest amount of time possible, what should they really be looking to prioritize?
Dare I say data again, you know, I mean, like, there's a myriad of stuff out there, and I think if you're starting from square one, the obvious thing is to go for the biggest thing first. So if you can start to control your HVAC and not just, there's a difference here between like retrofitting things and then making sure it's fit for purpose if you're lucky enough to be in growth, which, some hospitality operators are now.
Yeah.
Which is great. Yeah, you're not going to start off with trying to get the most efficient combi oven or fryer or something like that in place. You're going to start with the big loads.
Yeah, understood.
Feel like that's too easy an answer to have not answered your question properly. But.
The next one is directly related to what PowerHub offer to the industry and the hospitality and leisure sector in specific is what we offer to them. Where do things like voltage management solutions, EMS control, BMS enhancement, IoT capability, and appliance level refrigeration interventions fit, and where do they fit into kind of scope 2 in your opinion, and what evidence should operators demand from businesses like mine before they scale?
Yeah, well, my opinion that a lot of these solutions aren't drop a cap over it. If you've got 100 sites, you fit it in 100 sites sort of thing. So there's going to be hurdle rates and things like that. And I think as a supplier, you and others need to kind of acknowledge that.
Yeah, and guide. And be the supplier who says, don't put it there. You're not going to see the use case there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but there's a place for each of those things you've talked about. Some of them work at site level, like voltage optimization, as we know, but not at every site, dependent on the incoming voltage. I think if you're at a position where you're kind of trying to impact individual assets, then you must have optimized everything else already.
Yeah.
Now that makes proving those solutions really tricky because you're talking about a little bit of a little bit. So there is an argument for doing it all up front because that's more efficient. Send
and looking
them
at
to
it
site once and package and bundle it all together.
Yeah.
But you asked me, what should the operator be demanding of you?
Yeah.
Well, honesty, transparency, independent monitoring, all that kind of stuff, and the willingness to listen and work and not forceful rollout on you. But I'd flip that round and say, what should a solution provider like yourself expect of the operator? Which is fairness and quid pro quo. It's almost the if you then I. It's, if I've done a desktop exercise for free, I've gone to site and surveyed for free, I've maybe, dare I say, even fitted some kit for free or a reduced price or whatever, there has to be a commitment from the operator to move forward.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, no, I agree. And I think the supplier can PowerHub in general can do better at kind of outlining that and making it happen. Less conversation, more doing. And really understanding the scope of the potential and gearing up the best way for it and meeting those goals, meeting the criteria that the operator really wants. It's lucky that we are in a position where we can offer free proof of concepts, but obviously if it works, they're not in there free forever. And obviously it's supported with that granular monitoring, real-time monitoring, which is the best thing we ever did move towards, is not delivering a project without that. And that's the base expectation of our business now, is that we wouldn't even consider putting it in and asking the client, oh, what is it saving? Where other providers still are. And I think that's a huge kind of paradigm shift you're seeing specifically in scope 2, is that it's so important to have all of the ducks in the row because it's a competitive environment. There's so many different things people can look at. It's navigating through that and fitting out finding the best fit for that operator. And that's why I think different products have different time scales as well to them. It's the low hanging fruit, mainly the holistic piece of technology that saves, and then go down down through those kind of usages where there's high usage and HVAC, refrigeration, etc., and start knocking them off as well. But yeah, rightly so. What I love now is that real-time monitoring can bring those different appliances together and show an entire saving. And it doesn't really matter then, the ROI's there on reducing the kilowatt hour consumption. It doesn't matter if one asset's doing this or one asset's doing that. It would be great to have that. But if you can show it as a whole saving, then I think that's really exciting as well, lumping it all together in one kind of proof of concept, and then taking that understanding knowledge from that proof of concept and applying it to where it's suited across the estate.
Yeah.
So with limited capital, what is the sensible order of operations kind of along that road to net zero, let's say? I know that's very, very holistic, but what is the sensible order if capital isn't readily available?
I think what I've seen from experience, and we've touched on some of it already today is like, people are scared of it, they don't understand it or whatever. So as an energy manager, if that's what you are, or somebody who's being tasked to have a look at this or whatever, you've got to think, what can I do with the least, path of least resistance approach almost. So like, I'm not asking for any money just yet.
Yeah.
And whatever comes with that. So there are little things that you would do with a patch of sites. The operators might be against it, for example. Let's start again. There's no money. The operators are against it because it goes, it's something else for them to do when they've got enough to do on site anyway, yada, yada, yada. So start small, maybe one area, one district, one region, whatever you call it in your brand, and deliver something. It might not even embed, but you're just showing that there's something is possible.
Yeah.
I think then if you in year one, you can, let's use an arbitrary £100,000, create a £100,000 saving, which will be available if you've not done anything on the state that £100,000 is a relative percentage of energy cost. The commitment you're asking from your business then is, if I save you £100,000, can you reinvest that for me next year, rather than it just kind of go onto the bottom line somewhere and be lost in the rounding?
I like that.
So then you've created that capital budget.
Yeah.
And then you can kind of kick on from there.
That's a fantastic way of looking at it. That really is using the low hanging fruit and those really, really quick wins, which are obviously going to most likely be the lowest cost kind of wins, as expensive technology is not required. You're talking about human behavior, operational behavior change, and then generating the savings, compounding those savings and putting it into further projects which do need a level of capital to influence.
I think another thing to look at perhaps is, like, hospitality operators are notorious when they're in growth and opening new sites to look at the payback of that new site. And typically they will look at the cost of opening the site and what they think they're going to sell. So how many people are going to walk through the door and how much they're going to spend. That'll be layered into rent and labour and cost of goods, etc. And I'm not going to say at no point, but at little point are the rest of the overheads then bundled into that. So I think that the first thing to do, if that new site doesn't work within their ROI, the first thing they do is cut the CapEx. Honestly, I see it. I've seen it for 16, 17, 18 years now. Cut the CapEx. So you're putting the wrong size fans in, inverters, air handling units, some cheaper kind of fryers or combi ovens or whatever that are using more energy. Same with walk-in fridges and freezers. Like, they might go for the lower insulation or no door curtains. And that property person, construction director, whatever it is you're called, cut the CapEx to improve the ROI. They're not taking into account the operational cost of that.
Yeah, I've never thought of it from that angle. Get it right the first time.
Yeah, so perhaps invest a little bit more.
Yeah,
but obviously fold and layer into the benefits
savings
of that
compared
spend.
to the lower offering. Yeah. No, that's a really clever way and insightful way of looking at it, actually.
I think, in this day and age now, there's still some lucky brands that can open 10, 20, 30 new ones
I can think of a few.
But at one point, that was right across the board. Casual dining was like in big boom, talking 2010 to 15, maybe something like that, perhaps a little bit further out. And at that point, it was just all about opening as many sites as possible, because that would deliver sales growth, which, assuming this site is operated properly, would drive profit growth. I'm sure people now would rather open fewer, better sites.
Yeah.
That's what I'd do anyway. It's easier, surely.
Yeah. Get it right and nail it every time. Yeah. No, that's really interesting as well. One risk to name in early board papers. So, and how to then mitigate that risk. So what are those risks and how do you mitigate them?
Yeah. And we're isolating this to our, specific area of expertise. So we're not talking about the risks of, government policy and whether or not, national living wage and NI is going to go up again, and inflation across cost of goods and all that kind of stuff. So we're ultimately talking about the volatile commodity energy market and the risk of non-commodity charges forever increasing. They rarely decrease. If anybody knew how to control the energy market, we'd be on a desert island somewhere. We'd have had that crystal ball. The rear from the rear view mirror is that, is so much clearer than that of the windshield and all that kind of good stuff. So the risk is a volatile energy market. The only way you can control and mitigate that risk is controlling your usage. So you've got to some extent, accept that you're not in control of the market. You can put risk managed procurement strategies in place and all that kind of stuff, but ultimately the cheapest unit of energy is the one that you never use in the first place. So risk, energy price, mitigation, don't use it.
Yeah. Simple. Oh God, I wish it was easier said than done. I wish it was easier to be done than said. I should have said that. It didn't make sense, that one. Something you're very, very clued up on here, and I know this is a very potentially a long-winded answer, and please do go as in detail as you wish. Tactical versus transformational. So give one tactical change that builds momentum for a harder transformational change later.
Yeah, I think you've given some of the answer in the question there. But, what we're talking about is going back to the scope 3 issue without panic that we talked about earlier, that they are the transformational things. They're the things that are going to disrupt business the way you're doing it now. Things that you may be forced to do because we've not transitioned to a net zero economy, and therefore there's price volatility and availability volatility left, right and centre, and they're hard decisions to make. But I think they're easier to make if you've got a precedent and if you've got a cultural change in place that gives people the confidence to make these decisions, take a risk, dare I say, and also kind of be able to make the decisions from an informed point of view. So what you're talking about really is things that are easier to manage and measure, like energy.
Yeah.
Do something in that space.
Yeah.
Or do something that's not going to break your brand, like putting a employee commuting policy or whatever, which makes it easier for people to use public transport or ride to work and that sort of thing. And I think if you've done those sorts of things early, it's not going to like massively turn the dial in your overall scope 1, 2, 3 footprint. But what it will do is it will prove to stakeholders, whether that's investors, shareholders, guests, team members, that your business is, trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And it's not just about doing the right thing. It's obviously about controlling costs and protecting yourself from volatility in the longer run and building resilience in your brand and in your business model. So I think if you're doing those tactical changes, which is just a leap over a hurdle, it then helps you blast through that big brick wall further down the line.
I love it. Yeah, and I like that analogy. I guess as well as part of that is being resilient to it not going perfectly as well. These things can't be, Rome wasn't built in a day type analogy, like is get started and do something, which I got out of that is it's really important to do something, act, show willing determination. And if a few things don't go the way it's planned, those small little changes you're making should eventually compound and create a much bigger change later.
Yeah, I think that comes back to what I said earlier, be transparent, document the doubt, don't be afraid of not being perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know we've discussed recently in the presentation you delivered that your method for turning kind of a 1.2 million kilowatt hour target. I know that's a very open-ended, but yeah, your method for turning a 1.2 million kilowatt hour target into weekly actions people can actually do.
Yeah, I mean, what's 1.2 million kilowatt hours?
Yeah.
I know what it is. You know what it is. Does a server, does a kitchen manager know what it is? Is it a lot? Is it not a lot? Is it enough? Like, nobody really knows. So you've got to put it into their language and break it down into manageable chunks. And that's not new news to people. When hospitality brands are setting their sales budgets for the next year, they take this year and add something on, and it looks really difficult. But then when they say, well, hey, that's that per month, that's that per week, and that's that not even per day necessarily or whatever, but what you realize is that once you've broken it down, you've got a line of sight on it, and it might actually only be the equivalent of serving an extra 10 portions of onion rings to a table of 4 or whatever, or an extra pint of Carling back in the day. Probably something more expensive and more European than that now. But yeah, they're tasked on second serves, they're tasked on upselling and bolting on side orders. And so it's using that language and making them realise that actually it's easier to turn the lights off than it is to sell an extra portion of onion ring.
I like it. I really like that analogy. So if it just two quick kind of, let's say, quick fire questions before we kind of round it up into the final piece, I think. One behavior default you would change in every venue tomorrow if you could.
Oh, have we done this? I mean, I'm going to have to go back to kind of like, well, first of all, let me try and make it a bit of, instead of just kind of like resting on my laurels, as it were. If I've not hit home on it already, it has to become part of the drumbeat of the business and not an additional thing.
Not a separate entity. Yeah.
You know, three-legged chair analogy, sales, cost of goods and labour. If one leg falls off, then the chair's going to fall over. If you add a fourth leg and the leg falls off, it's got a chance of standing.
Yeah.
So whilst actually you've got to keep four legs maintained, there's a better chance that your business is more resilient overall. So if you're asking them to literally turn things on and off at the right time, i.e. close down and fire up, then that's what you should do.
Love it. Love it.
That wasn't very quick fire, was it?
No, I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was perfect. What's one chart you never present without?
That's tricky because, again, when we talk about the mentality of folding it into the drumbeat of the business, it has to look and feel the same as the business is used to working. Otherwise, it's going to be something kind of different and is easier to shove to one side because it's disconnected.
Let me rephrase the question then. So what would be your call to action on getting energy as a whole topic, scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, whatever it may be? What would be your strategy to get that as the foreleg on that store?
Okay, so a lot of hospitality operators use scorecards, and that'll be rolled up from site level to area level to district level to brand level, probably in a lot of cases. I'm talking multi-site, established brands here. And on those scorecards will be kind of sales, cost of goods, labour. I've said that a lot today, health and safety scores, all that kind of thing. And, they'll red, amber, green it. Now, they're all measurable, as we've touched on, whether it's wastage or whatever, it's all measurable. And they believe in it. And they believe that if they do this over here, the light goes from red to green over here. So I would suggest adding it to the scorecard so it feels part of what they already do. Perhaps using it as an unscored matrix, because often these scorecards impact people's bonuses. Yeah. So kind of don't scare them too much straight away. Kind of just get them used to seeing it on there.
Yeah. And seeing whether it's green, amber, red, whatever it may be. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
No, I love it. I think that's a real top tip. And then the final piece, if every operator listening did two things, it actually says by next Friday, but I know you're going to laugh me out the door if I say that. So if every operator listening were to do two things by the next meeting, let's say, the next kind of that review, what would they be?
I'd probably laugh you out a little bit still based on next meeting.
Bring it on.
If you're talking about next meeting, it's getting some kind of like consensus around the room that something needs to be done. What I'm going to say is you don't rush these things, because otherwise it's not going to embed, it's not going to become part of the drumbeat or whatever. You've got no way of measuring what impact it's had and that sort of thing. So you've got to have a proper plan in place, right?
That's a great answer.
With measuring and data, and then identifying those hotspots and what levers have you got to pull, whether it is technology or behaviour, probably a mixture of both and that sort of thing. So yeah, whilst there are quick wins and things that you can literally do today, I think in the grander scheme of things, a bit of patience and planning is probably the best way to start out.
So the answer really completely contradicts the question. Do not rush, take your time and make it embedded, and really embed it into that process, that scorecard.
I think so. I mean, I could have said, go away and turn all your lights off. But then, there are restaurants where you can eat in the dark, but you know what I mean? These things have got to be thought about and make sure that we're not impacting the guest journey and all that kind of thing, and we're enriching it.
Yeah, and I think these operators have time. They've got that ability and that time to not rush into this. Everyone's kind of on that movement. It's becoming more and more important. So I think act now, do something, be more open to learning about opportunities to reduce. On the scope 2 side, for sure, that's what I would say wouldn't it benefit us. But really, that scope 1 and scope 3 piece, well, scope 3 piece definitely is that kind of transformational, does look really, really complex from the outset. But once broken down into manageable exercises with the right reporting and monitoring, supporting it, it's very much achievable for a lot of brands, a lot of businesses, a lot of operators.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Perfect.